it's our 200th anniversary, and I somehow did the very weird thing when I started this sermon series of preaching extemporaneously, because our greatest preacher spent his Friday and Saturday sort of crafting his sermon and then would preach on Sunday without a text. And then he weirdly wrote everything he just said on Monday, and then he would get it published, and then congregants bought it on the next Sunday. So I somehow thought, not that you were going to buy the sermon, but I thought it would be fun to sort of try that process of thinking about what the sermon could be and then preaching it as if it was off the top of my head, which, to be completely honest, today it is. But when I thought of this particular sermon, I thought, I'm going to just tell the story of the church. I'm going to tell the whole story. I'm going to do 200 years in 20 minutes. And if you look at the front of your bulletin, that's what it says, 200 years in 20 minutes. I'm going to tell you right now, this is false advertising. It's fake news. You get a refund on your way out. It's not going to happen. I think I might give you like 40 years tops, because I just couldn't figure out how to do 200 years in 20 minutes in any way that was worth listening to. So I'm just going to really tell about the story of our founding. Really what happened at the beginning. So New York was originally founded by the Dutch. The Dutch are super cool in that they are really very interested in diversity. They're interested in a variety of thought. They're interested in a variety of ways that people believe. They were open to different kinds of things. You know what they cared about most, though? Making money. So they came to New York. This was the only colony that wasn't concerned about religious purity. They were concerned about making money. And as long as you were here to make money, you were good. They didn't want all the other colonies, all of the religious purity tests. No, none of that. None of that had to happen. Are you here to work? So when 8 Jews in Brazil wrote a letter that said, we want to come work, the Dutch were like, bring it on. Everybody is welcome. This set New York up in a way I don't even think we are all that conscious of. But from the beginning, New York was a place of diversity. It was a place of open, free thought. It was a place where people could believe what they believed. They could practice their faith. The British came in, I think it was 1664. There was a bloodless battle. The Dutch moved out. The British took over. The British were here until 1783. Which means that the Anglicans showed up, but it didn't matter. There were already so many people worshiping here. They just kept bringing people in. It was okay. It was okay. When they left in 1783, there were at least 12 distinct faith groups here, which is really good in terms of where can Unitarianism grow up. So in 1819, William Ellery Channing, who was a very prominent congregational theologian in Boston, he was invited to go to Baltimore. Now, I looked this up. How do you get to Baltimore from Boston in 1819? You know what? Mostly you walk. You take a stagecoach, which means a horse is walking, or you walk, or maybe a steamboat for part of it. It is at least a week to get from Boston to Baltimore. So on his way, he stopped in New York to hang out with his sister. His sister, it turns out, was a Congregationalist. She gathered some friends together to hear her very famous brother talk about whatever it is he was heading off to Baltimore to talk about, which it turns out was a groundbreaking idea called Unitarian Christianity. When William Ellery Channing preached the sermon eventually in Baltimore, he turned what was very newly the United States of America upside down and formed Unitarianism, But on his way to do that, he stopped in New York. And his sister and her friends thought that was a very cool idea. They thought Unitarianism makes sense. Because Unitarianism, as he was pitching it, was, he said, let's take all this religion, this Christianity we all believe in, and do a few things. One, let's use reason. What if we just use reason to understand faith? Two, what if we looked at Scripture as a very interesting book that has a lot to teach us, but wasn't written by God? What if it's just an interesting book? And what if the Trinity isn't real? What if we use reason to understand God? In that moment, those people in New York thought this is fascinating, and they started what became the first Congregational Unitarian Church. In 1819, there were about 122,000 people. They started the church. By 1825, there were 165,000 people in New York. Imagine for a moment, 40,000 people showed up over the next 6 years and moved into the city. Right? I mean, the sheer volume of people that showed up. And so there they were in the city, and they had their brand new little church, but there was no way to accommodate so many people. And Unitarian Christianity was so popular that people were coming. They were like taking boats from Brooklyn to come hear these new preachers. It was so exciting to them, this brand new way, this enlightenment way of understanding religion, that people were coming from everywhere and they didn't know what to do. So what did they do? They founded a new church. They started us. This is how Community Church started. We were, as Brother Zachary said, we were the uptown church. We were the ones where like all the rich people are going uptown to the corner of Prince and Mercer. And they built this gorgeous Federalist church, and they built it on the northwest corner. And in 1831, someone set fire to it. And they set fire to it because even in their few little years of existing, they had taken some strong stands. They were an abolitionist church. And here in New York, that was a really controversial thing to be. New York had outlawed slavery in 1827. But those people here in the city who had before owned people and no longer did were angry about it. And they were doing things like setting churches on fire. They were also attacking people in the street. It went on like that. So our church burned, but it didn't burn to the ground. They fixed it up. It burned again. They set it on fire again. 1837, it burned to the ground. The story of our church, I have to say, has a lot to do with fire. That church burned to the ground. Our next church burned to the ground. The church after that burned to the ground. I just want to say, like, we should get out of here while we have done no damage. We moved because we had to, and because all the people were moving uptown. Right? As long as the people were moving uptown, we kept moving uptown. So we moved over to Broadway at Waverly or Astor Place. We moved uptown. We built a fancy new church. Our new church was expensive. It cost $90,000 to build our new church. And they paid for it by auctioning off pews. And the reason I care about this is because it's ridiculously offensive. And I'm going to tell you why, so you care about it too. Essentially, what they're doing, right, they're saying like this pew here, and I'm telling you, these pews that we're sitting in, these were once auctioned off too. This pew, this is the best pew because you're so close. And of course, there's no amplification. So when you're close, you can really hear things. The rich people get to sit there because they can buy it and they can spend the most money to get that pew, or that one over there, or that one over there. If you don't have any money, you can't buy a pew and you end up in the back. So the church was auctioning off pews. They needed $90,000. They made $70,000 in 2 hours by auctioning off their pews. And then someone donated the difference, and that's how they built the church. This becomes a thing when we move again, and then we move again, and the minister shows up and says, does anyone care that that's wildly offensive? And at that point, the congregants went, well, now that you mention it, it really is. And we stopped doing that. But at the time, that was the way things were done. I can't tell the whole story of this church. I can say this. This church grew with New York. The way that New York kept becoming open to the possibility of something greater, this church was always one step ahead. One step. You're ready to talk about abolition? Let's move it along. You're ready to talk about civil rights? We're at the front of that line too. Over and over. Planned Parenthood got started in our offices. Margaret Sanger, great friend of John Haynes Holmes. Apartheid in South Africa. The energy, the office space, community church. So many things that happened because this church was ready to say yes over and over and over again, to keep asking questions about what was next. And while I joke about the fire, the other real thing about this church has been that we keep reinventing. We keep burning down, that's true. We keep burning down and we keep reinventing. We keep asking ourselves, who do we have to be in this moment? I came to community church 6 years ago, not really knowing all that much about the church, which I shouldn't tell anybody on the search committee because I think I faked it pretty well. But in these 6 years, there's this magic about this church, this sense of place that has nothing to do with our building, right? We keep moving. We keep moving. We've moved so many times. And we change ministers. There have been lots of ministers. And obviously we change congregants. The thing that stays stable for 200 years is that we keep our eye right in front, over and over. What's next? What's next? The thing that I am so proud to be part of, and that I'm hoping you are also proud to be part of, is that we continue to move things forward. And there's so much to move forward. There's so much to move forward. You know, New York City was just declared subtropical because of the climate. We have now moved into a whole new climate. We have genocide. We have the fall of democracy. We have so many things to worry about. And I have such deep gratitude to be part of a community that has, over and over and over again, for 200 years, continued to be at the front of every line, moving us forward, moving us forward. That's all you need to know about our 200-year history. See? 20 minutes.